The Navy is currently experiencing a crisis of astronomical proportions in Hawaii.
Angered that they allowed it to go this long.
How disgusted I am at how you have failed the community.
Things that should not be in my water.
I can smell it.
They deserve answers.
What I'm trying to do is find out why our system didn't inform us up front as to what was going on when it was happening.
Felt like that we were being gaslit and swept under the rug, and we are not a priority to them.
The public has lost trust and confidence in the actions of the Navy.
We've been feeling sick. My son has said that he has like a fire burning in his stomach.
They did find a trace amount of diesel.
No.
We do have high confidence that it was from that singular event at that 20 November spill.
It's not the fuel itself that's making them sick. It's the fuel in the water that's making them sick.
I feel like everyone else feels outraged. You know, the Navy has lied and denied about this issue for years, and now we are in a catastrophe.
I think it's time for action now. It is time we cannot wait any longer.
The state has never faced a crisis like this. Hello, I'm Civil Beat reporter Christina Jedra.
And I'm Jonathan Jared Sapi of Hawaii News Now. Our two news organizations are collaborating to focus in on the impacts of one of the biggest stories of 2021, the tainted water and the ongoing debate over Red Hill.
In this special report, we hope to give you a better understanding of what's been happening the last several weeks on Oahu and what has put the island's water supply at risk.
One thing is for certain. This still developing situation is far from over.
I'm outraged.
As Oahu residents reel from the news that military families' drinking water was contaminated with petroleum and that water for the broader community is also at risk, scrutiny of the Navy's nearby fuel facility is intensifying.
This water isn't theirs, it's all of ours, and yet they have had the audacity to store their chemicals near our water to poison our land, our natural resources, and now, even though they said they live here and they drink the water too, they've shown they're more than willing to poison their own families as well.
But the crisis is not a surprise to many residents, officials, and local environmental advocates. For years, they've considered Red Hill an impending environmental and public health disaster.
It's been a successive attempts at really buffoonery and messing up this issue. So it's a lot of grief and mourning with the realization that we have to work together now. There is no other alternative. We need to shut down these tanks and keep Oahu's aquifer safe.
I think this is a foreshadowing of what could happen to the broader community if we don't do something about the storage of this of fuel.
On Sunday, my children took a bath, and for 45 minutes afterwards, they complained of burning skin.
So the military said it caught wind of the emergency over the Thanksgiving weekend as complaints rolled in from military housing residents saying their water smelled of fuel and that their families and pets were falling ill.
My house began to smell like a gas station, and I couldn't breathe, and I was choking. I opened all the windows and the doors and stuff to get ventilation going through, but it still took quite a while for the fumes to clear.
There's been so much misinformation, no information, nothing given to the residents here. I have called since Sunday.
We are working to get everyone working towards the same goals, and that is to take care of our people.
After initially dismissing concerns, the Navy later acknowledged that the Red Hill well was contaminated.
It's unbelievable. Like, they haven't told us, they keep on saying that there's nothing wrong. And a lot of us are smelling it, we're getting sick from it, and it's crazy to us.
I thought I was having an allergic reaction or something, because I do have hay fever and allergies, but When I went to the hospital, they checked me and they were like, well, what were you exposed to?
So thank you for bringing that to our attention. We are on top of that. That's one of the things. I'm not trying to poke anybody in the chest or get anybody in trouble. What I'm trying to do is find out why our system didn't inform us up front as to what was going on when it was happening. Maybe it didn't reach a threshold that some level of leadership decided was enough to communicate. I can fix that.
If it's going to be a long-term thing, then I suppose there's going to have to be some form of restitution or some form of alternate means of, showering and doing laundry.
State health officials announced that the Navy's water system contained levels of gasoline and diesel range hydrocarbons as much as 350 times higher than state standards for safe drinking water.
We have small children that are vomiting and have diarrhea, and it is dehydrating them. And because they can't drink the water, they're becoming more dehydrated. We have families that are also reporting getting bumps or blisters on their skin as well.
The suspected epicenter for this tainted water crisis is here. The Red Hill Bulk Fuel Storage Facility is made up of 20 massive pill-shaped fuel tanks and a system of pipelines that use the force of gravity to deliver fuel to Pearl Harbor 2.5 miles away. So this will put the size into perspective. Construction of those tanks used enough steel to manufacture 12,000 classic cars. Also, enough concrete to build a 5-mile stretch of freeway. And all of those tanks are buried 100 feet below the surface. All 20 of them each measure 250 feet high, 100 feet in width, and have the capacity of holding 12.5 million gallons. That's large enough to hold Aloha Tower. Each of the tanks have a thin steel liner, and you can see that represented here in this graphic by a black line. The steel is about 1/4 of an inch thick, and it is now corroding. It is encased by a concrete shell, which is represented here in gray. The Navy admits it cannot access that concrete, therefore it is impossible to maintain. And check out this sample taken from one of the tanks. It shows the level of corrosion that the steel has undergone. And keep this in mind, the facility's pipelines are just as old as the tanks. All right, Christina, you wrote the article for Civil Beat for which this special report is based upon. Wanted to bring you in to the H&N Digital Center just to chat about some of the other stats and knowledge you learned. What can you share with us?
Well, the facility generally holds about 180 million gallons of fuel, and that's just 100 feet above our drinking water aquifer that supplies 77% of the drinking water to the entire island, according to the health department.
That's a lot. Also wanted to talk about when this facility was built. It was actually during wartime, right?
It was in preparation for World War II, built in haste in the early 1940s by workers who literally blasted away volcanic rock, creating these cavities in which the tanks were built.
Let's talk about some of the problems and incidents that have went down over the years. What happened?
There have been a history of leaks. Since 1943, the facility has recorded at least 73 fuel leaks, totaling 180,000 gallons of fuel, if not more, according to the Sierra Club. The Navy does dispute that number. And I should say also that the Navy still maintains that Red Hill is a vital national security asset used by all branches of the military here on Oahu. Military officials say the facility is still needed for mission readiness in response to what they say is increasing aggression from Russia and China. And they also note that Red Hill would be useful in the case of a natural disaster here on Oahu.
And we certainly do see some of those. Let's play out what's something I'm sure everyone's wondering about. Will the military be willing to give up these tanks? Here's what the Secretary of the Navy said about just that on Oahu while he was visiting.
We look at all options, and all options are on the table, certainly, but we're looking at some very serious options here in the very near future.
Back in 2008, The Hawaii Department of Health recommended that the Navy install a leak detection system and underground monitoring wells to protect the drinking water. Even at that time, petroleum contamination was evident underneath the tanks, according to the DOH. You want to keep this in mind. The Honolulu Board of Water Supply's Halawa shaft, which provides 20% of the drinking water for the region, is less than a mile away.
It comes as no surprise at all that they are not cooperating.
In 2014, an estimated 27,000 gallons of fuel escaped from one of the tanks. After that release, groundwater and soil monitoring systems registered spikes in diesel and petroleum, according to DOH.
There clearly were some problems with repairs that were done to the tank.
We haven't gone to actually try and pull out any petroleum product that might still be around the tank or in the bedrock near the tank.
The Department of Health said earlier this year that the Red Hill facility's location above the aquifer is inherently dangerous, and the DOH Environmental Health Administration stated in July that it doesn't believe Red Hill can operate in a way that protects human health and the environment.
How can I possibly ever trust anything that any of you present to me and my family?
Navy officials suspect the current water contamination crisis was caused by leaks that occurred this year. On May 6th, over 1,600 gallons of fuel spilled from a burst pipeline in the facility's lower access tunnel. And on November 20th, 14,000 gallons of water and fuel leaked from a fire suppression line in a tunnel at the halfway point between the tanks and the Red Hill drinking water shaft.
There's still a possibility that there could be multiple leaks, and you are not 100% confident that it's definitely contained.
We do have high confidence that it was from that singular event of that 20 November spill. The investigation will also determine an estimate of the volume that's not accounted for. So we know how much was spilled, we know how much was cleaned up, what's the difference, and they're going those calculations and that engineering analysis, and that'll allow us to get that information and also to share it with the Department of Health and the Board of Water Supply and all the other folks that are interested in understanding that. That'll determine what the extent of impact is on the Red Hill well itself. But certainly this 20 November event, we're calling it a spill because it wasn't coming from the fuel system itself. It was fuel located in a different line, and it was identified, it was isolated, we cleaned it up and we disposed of what we had, but apparently based on our indications, we didn't get it all, and there was some that then ended up getting in the aquifer, and that's the condition we're dealing with now.
So that's what the Navy said, but just listen to what the Board of Water Supply said in front of the City Council at a special meeting.
I believe that that May 6th event, the Red Hill facility came very close to a potentially catastrophic fuel release event because in a way it is, although this is not good, it's fortunate that the pipeline blew apart at two different locations, and that a rupture in the pipeline didn't occur anywhere along the 3.5 miles of fuel pipelines, the JP5 line, which is, I think, 16 inches in diameter, that brings fuel from the tanks all the way to Pearl Harbor. So we're very fortunate that they didn't suffer a failure in any portion of that pipeline. But to me, that's an indication that this facility, as we maintain, the fuel needs to be emptied out as soon as possible from the tanks and the pipelines to protect our water resources from further damage.
The Navy's Red Hill water shaft is located a half mile from the fuel tanks. It is one of 3 water sources that feed into the Joint Base Pearl Harbor-Hickam system, and it is now significantly contaminated with JP5 or jet fuel.
I'm washing, and all of a sudden I'm smelling some kind of a funky smell.
Help us out. Diesel contamination is also present near a second water source, the Navy's Aiea Halawa shaft, but there's been some back and forth about that between military and state officials.
I think the Navy needs to clarify more as to where that sample came from, under what conditions it was sampled.
The contamination impacts the entire Joint Base system, which is interconnected and serves 93,000 people. Hawaii News Now asked the BWS's chief engineer about the risk of it spreading to the public's water supply in urban Honolulu.
How do we know that the contamination won't continue to spread?
No, we really don't know. So what we're taking is a very precautionary approach because we do not want to put fuel into our water system and experience the same issues and problems that the Navy has. So to avoid that, the only thing we can do right now is to turn off those sources that we think might be potentially impacted. We don't know for sure, but we're taking the precautionary approach.
Well, what I can tell you is I looked at live video feed of the Red Hill well, and there is not trace amounts of fuel. There is a lot of fuel in the Red Hill well. I can only describe it as have a bowl of water and pour balsamic vinegar on that, in that bowl of water, and see the black, balsamic separate from the water. That's what it looks like right now.
According to BWS, there is no natural barrier stopping the Navy's contamination from migrating across the Halawa Valley to the civilian water source.
This environment and this particular entry and exit is very challenging.
A mobile diving and salvage unit is spearheading the Navy's cleanup work.
We've set up some hydraulic pumps, and we have a way to remove what we're skimming from the top, which we suspect to be where the contamination would be located, as it is likely to float, to some big holding tanks that we have outside for sampling.
We do it in shifts, so we're kind of rotating out because it's really hot down there and it's not comfortable.
A cause for additional concern is that BWS officials don't have a sense of how bad the contamination is, where exactly it's coming from, or how fast it might be moving.
Shortly after hearing the news about the Navy, we have shut down Halawa Shaft. Halawa Shaft represents about 20% of the supply for urban Honolulu, from Halawa all the way out to Hawaii Kai. As a precaution, because we tap the same aquifer, we basically take water from the same glass of water.
The border water supply is erring on the side of caution. The BWS's Halawa Shaft has been shut down since December 2nd. So let's go back to our two straws drinking out of the same glass example. So each straw represents a different well, one being for the BWS, one being for the Navy. So I'm going to place a drop of olive oil into this glass that represents the contamination. So the oil is floating on top of the glass, and it's not going to move much with no suction or even suction coming from both straws. But remove one straw. So watch, all the oil is going to migrate to the active side.
Fuel sitting on top of the water, that's one component. But there's also fuel that dissolves eventually into the water and goes into a solution into different components. I kind of think what the Navy's trying to do is remove what they can see. They've shut down pumping because they suspect that their source is contaminated with petroleum. What we don't want to do is keep on pumping from our side of that glass and suck the fuel across the valley through the underground aquifer, which exists in the porous lava rock, into our wells and send it to our homes, to our customers. We do not want to do that.
According to the Board of Water Supply, the Halawa Shaft is particularly vulnerable to contamination because it sucks water right from the top of the aquifer.
To understanding its direction, where it's going, and how much is present.
With 3 of its wells shuttered for now, the Board of Water Supply is relying on other wells closer to Diamond Head to meet the demands of the city and beyond.
Right now, during the cooler times of the year, we're able to sustain that. What's going to be really critical is when we move into the summer next year, when water demand is much higher, and that's the time of year we normally pump more water, and that's when we're going to find out how well our stations are able to accommodate that.
We did discuss the need for independent experts and independent sampling and reporting of data.
Governor David Ige has ordered the Navy to suspend all operations at Red Hill. build a water treatment facility and make a plan to empty the tanks. The Navy is now fighting the order, which could lead to a prolonged legal battle.
The reason that the state decided to issue that order is clearly we have fuel in the water system. It is isolated to Red Hill, but we want to make sure that there is no further action taken that could increase the contamination that's occurring.
The governor's order represents a significant shift in the political winds on an issue that many activists have felt was not taken seriously for years.
What's happening under Red Hill may not be visible to the human eye as you're driving over that freeway, but it's a form of slow violence that's been inflicted on the land.
Until very recently, the Hawaii Department of Health did not regulate the Navy's fuel storage system. While it acknowledged its role to provide oversight to civilian underground fuel storage facilities, it specifically exempted Red Hill.
I'm pretty depressed. It is, this was all foreseeable. We knew this was going to happen. Nobody listened to us. Navy officials have testified under oath that the tanks couldn't leak, that if they did leak, there's no way they could reach drinking water. And it's happened.
This is not the eighth wonder of the world. This is Frankenstein's monster. We have invented something that we cannot regulate, and it is our responsibility to kill it before it kills us.
The Navy had to apply for a state permit for the very first time in 2019. BWS and the Sierra Club have contested that permit, and the case is ongoing. DOH inspected Red Hill for the first time last year, a visit that led to a $325,000 fine for environmental violations.
Logistically, how would draining the facility work if we called for the shutdown of the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility? How long would it take? Where would you store the fuel? And at what draining the Red Hill fuel tanks would mean for the United States military?
As far as your questions go, sir, I'd love to take that for the record and come back to you with an answer.
Even as recently as a few weeks ago, some of Hawaii's congressional delegation considered the idea of closing Red Hill down to be unrealistic. But now that fuel has hit people's faucets, Senator Mazie Hirono says all options are on the table.
Because you all understand that these tanks contain a lot of fuel. It's a massive installation.
Given really what's happened in the last few months, especially now, as I said directly to the Secretary of the Navy, look, where I probably would have mostly trusted the Navy, now I just have to be skeptical. I have to ask myself to review that independently. I can't just take your word for it.
For now, BWS says its customers don't have to worry about buying bottled water, and officials say they are constantly testing their system for signs of trouble. But it's a different situation on base, where water wagons and signs saying not to drink the water are the new norm.
I'm sick right now. My two sons are at home sick. It's not safe. It's not clean.
Since the confirmation of the contamination, businesses have been impacted and schools have been making lunches without water.
We are not flushing.
And there's already been controversy about the Navy's cleanup efforts. The Navy now says it is complying with a state order to stop flushing its tainted water into storm drains and even from home sinks and tubs.
Connect a hose.
Now the Navy has a new strategy. Leaders say at least 20 large filtration systems are on the way to scrub the petroleum from 25 million gallons of water. We're told the process could take up to 2 weeks.
Actually, Brita filters, those pitcher style filters, the carbon that they use in there, it's basically a very large capacity version of that.
Navy mom Jamie Simek lives in military housing on Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam. She knew something was wrong when she noticed the ice in her freezer had an odd yellow color. She ended up having to go to Tripler Army Medical Center's emergency department with a number of symptoms. She says doctors have confirmed she likely has hydrocarbon toxicity. Hawaii News Now spoke to her from her hospital bed.
And the rest of your family is now staying in a hotel in Waikiki, so you have evacuated your home at Hickam.
Yeah, we got out, so the husband and kids are there.
Jamie, you've seen the news that the Navy's testing and they're communicating with Department of Health now. They said that there was diesel found in their water. When you saw that, knowing how you've been feeling, what was your reaction?
Same as the first time. Anger and relief. Anger that they allowed it to go this long. Anger when I see all the posts on Facebook of other people that have had symptoms, severe symptoms, and have been ignored as well. But relief, because other people are seeing it, hearing it, and smelling it. So maybe it'll force their hand to finally do something.
Jamie is just one of so many military families that have been moved from their homes on base to hotels to ensure access to clean water.
Nothing is normal at all. It's impossible, really impossible and stressful and just unreasonable. That's my laundry, my daughter and I's laundry, dirty laundry in there. I'm driving back and forth in traffic every day. I'm spending an hour taking my kids. You know, we get up super early every morning to drive and drop one kid off at school and drop the next kid off at school, come back here, and sit for a couple of hours to then go back. This is different to us. We don't do this, and never mind the cost of eating downtown every day, and we just don't. So I'm like, I can't do this anymore.
And just listen to what the Army had to say about how long it could take before families will be able to go back.
We have a plan to get there, but that plan is not going to happen. It's not going to be complete overnight. As a matter of fact, our best estimates right now is that that plan is probably going to take somewhere on the order of 6 to 8 weeks. So I am disappointed to tell you, but I have to be honest with you to tell you that we're not going to be able to move you back into your homes for Christmas.
There are so many more details from my Civil Beat investigation that we were not able to include in this presentation. That includes internal military emails and some alarming findings by a consultant that were downplayed by the Navy.
You can read Christina's entire story at both Civil Beat's and Hawaii News Now's digital platforms. Both our news organizations are committed to covering this very important story. Thanks so much for watching this special report.